Alright, so class, so now we are going to go on independent study, and with that, I'm going to give you this lesson or this part 3 of the history of abnormal psychology. So in our previous lesson, we were able to discuss the biological, the supernatural, the psychological, and many more in our past few lessons. But right now, I'm going to discuss to you the part 3, which includes the rest, and finally, the last part for this lesson, the history. Alright, so let's go to behavioral. So, behavioral entails on all the behavioral aspect na ginagawa in psychology. If you can still remember your lesson in theories of personality, we have the behaviorism, theories of personality. Where does the personality came from? So this is actually basically it. So this is just a review. I will no longer go in depth with this one because this is just a review. So we have first the term classical conditioning. This is wherein someone or a person learns from starting from the neutral stimulus and then paired with another that is paired to another stimulus to elicit a response. Okay, so in simple terms, ito yung for example, yung classical dog. Classical dog example. So, nagsalivate yung dog, yung dog nagsasalivate siya every time there's a food. However, ang ginawa is that before giving a food, binibigyan muna ng bell ring, and then that is paired with the food, and then every time na may bell tuloy, nagsasalivate na yung dog. So, that's a classical example for classical conditioning. So the unconditioned stimulus in that scenario is what we call the dog food. Okay, that's the natural stimulus. Ibig sabihin, unconditioned stimulus, this is the stimulus na hindi pa pinipared in anything. Okay? So para mag-elicit ng response, ito yung nag-elicit ng natural response as well. That is what we call the unconditioned response. So the food itself alone is the unconditioned stimulus. The unconditioned response is the dog salivation. Ito yung natural response or the learned response. Okay, I hope that's clear. And then, kapag ka natuto na ang aso na makinig sa bell ring, doon na papasok yung conditioned stimulus. So, di ba, instead of bibigay agad yung food, magbe-bell ring muna, and then saka bibigay yung food, and then magsasalivate yung dog. Okay? Okay, so ganun muna. So, basically, when the time passed by, so bell pa lang, magsasalivate na yung dog. So, that's what we call the conditioned stimulus. Ang alin? Okay? So, yung bell. Okay? So, that's the newly conditioned event. Okay? That's why it's called event eh. Newly conditioned event introduced. So, that's the bell ring. The conditioned response is yung salivation. Okay? Kasi ito ay yung conditioned response because nagbibigay na yung response na yon based sa conditioned stimulus. So, bell ring, conditioned stimulus, binigay yung food, bell ring, conditioned stimulus, conditioned response would be the dog salivation, and then binigay yung food. That's the classical conditioning. So, what's extinction? Extinction is kapag hindi na nabibigay yung conditioned stimulus ng sobrang tagal na panahon, na-eliminate yung conditioned response. Or in simple terms, nawawala na yung classical conditioning. That's what we call extinction. So for example, yung aso hindi na binibigyan ng bell ring, diretso ng food na agad, so nagkaroon na ng extinction doon sa classical conditioning na natutunan ng aso before. So that's extinction. Alright, so next is we have the stimulus generalization. So before I continue class, I want you to know na pwede nyo i-rewind itong aking presentation if I'm going too fast. Okay? So to continue, so we have the stimulus generalization. This is wherein yung sobrang lakas ng response na nakukuha ng from a specific stimulus. Okay? So, ito ay maaaring kaparehas or kagaya ng conditioned stimulus. And then, because of that, nag-elicit siya ng response. So, in simple terms, let me just read the slide. Stimulus generalization is the strength of the response to similar objects or people is usually a function of how similar these objects or people are. So, in simple terms, for example, nag-bell ring. Ang bell ring is isa lang. A bell ring or the bell that was used was yung simple na ting 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 ting. Pero every time na may katulad na tunog. For example, di ba sa SM meron tayong ting, 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 doon yung sa train or something. So, every time na makakarinig ito ng aso na similar to that, magsasalivate siya. That's we called stimulus generalization. Now, let's go to introspection. Introspection was first developed by Edward Titchener, or this is his contribution. So, in introspection, this means to say that someone reports his inner thoughts and feelings after experiencing a certain stimuli. So, meaning to say, kung kunyari, nakakapagsalita lang yung aso. This is a bad example. For example, may specific stimulus, okay? And then, that stimulus triggered a specific response that is inappropriate or hindi maganda. We have the term introspection, wherein the person can actually process or report his or her inner thoughts and feelings. Kung ano nga ba yung na-experience nila. For example, trauma. So, every time na mayroong kagaya nagkaroon ng stimulus generalization. For example, cars. So, nagkaroon ng car accident before. Every time na nakakita ng car yung taong yun, nagkaroon siya ng stimulus generalization, nagkakaroon siya ng response na hindi kaaya-aya. Edward Titchener said that you can use the introspection to process and to report what are your inner thoughts and feelings whenever that stimulus exists. Okay, I hope that's clear. Alright, now let's go to John B. Watson. John B. Watson is very famous for his work in Little Albert. So I've already explained this before. Yung Little Albert is wherein John B. Watson, together with his wife, if I'm not mistaken, that's his wife na later on, naging wife niya yun. They experimented on a baby called Albert, and then that baby is whenever merong furry object, white furry object, is iiyak siya. Okay? It's because the story behind that is because baby Albert was trained, was conditioned rather, na every time na may furry object na puti, ay may iiyak siya is because merong kasabay na malaking bang sound. So that bang sound was associated to that white object. So that's why nagkaroon na ng parang trauma si Little Albert. It was unethical, and that actually began the behaviorism. I've already explained this in our past lesson, so you can also go back with that. But that's the concept of Little Albert. Alright, so I've already discussed this in our previous class. Systematic desensitization. So let me just repeat this. This is wherein you gradually introduce an object. Okay, before that. So a patient who has a fear will face his or her fear by gradually introducing that object. That's why it's called gradual because it's systematic So desensitization kasi para manhid or para mawala or para matanggal yung fear na yon. So we already explained this. For example, he's afraid of dogs. So first is the sound of the word dog. So kapag umokay na din siya doon, check. Second therapy session. Next is hear sound of the barking dog. So kapag umokay na siya doon, nasanay siya na doon, desensitize na siya doon, okay, second session is over. Check. Third session is an image of a dog. So kapag nasanay na siya doon and many more, check na desensitize na siya doon. And then on the fourth day is a stuffed animal dog. So kapag hindi na siya natatakot doon, okay, na-desensitize na siya, check. And then lastly, is seeing a dog in person and hopefully to tap the dog's head in person. So kapag nagpasa niya yun, so that's check. So that's what we call systematic desensitization. I've already explained this in our class as well, so I hope you remember that. Now let's go to operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is more on we're focusing on the reward and punishment. So, the reward and punishment. So, kapag for example, actually this is just a review. So, a behavior is given a reward or punishment depending on kapag nagawa niya yun. Actually, merong tong mga stages, or meron tong mga types. So, I will no longer go in depth with that because you've already done with your TOP. Hopefully, you've taken TOP already. But that's operant conditioning. Ang pinakamahalaga dito is what follows the behavior. So, kada gawa ng behavior, bibigyan ba natin siya ng reward or punishment? Ang goal lang dito is para ma-repeat ang behavior at para hindi maulit ang behavior. To repeat or not to repeat the behavior. That's the goal of rewards or punishment. Now, let's go to, before that, si B.F. Skinner ang nag-found ng operant conditioning. Okay? B.F. Skinner. Now, let's go to Edward Thorndike. Edward Thorndike founded the law of effects, wherein the behavior can either be strengthened or weakened. Okay? Pwede daw natin to patibayan or pwede daw natin to pahinain. Okay? So, I want you just to remember that. Okay? So, actually class, I'm no longer going in depth because this is just a review already. Okay? And then, reinforcement, this is a reward. Okay? So, reward given before para ma-repeat yung behavior. Okay? Now, let's go to the shaping. Shaping is wherein this is the process of reinforcing successive approximations to a final behavior or set of behaviors. So, in simple terms, ito yung kung saan you are giving specific rewards or punishments para ma-achieve ang specific behavior. Okay? So, this is also connected with operant conditioning. Again, pwede mong every time na nakakakuha ng mataas sa grade ang isang bata, pwede siyang bibigyan lagi ng candy para hopefully tumaas or pagpatuloy nga yung matataas na grades. Okay? So, however, yung ganong scenario, it doesn't give, my example rather, hindi siya proven and tested over time kasi nagkakaroon ng adverse effect or rather, other consequences. So, it does not work that way always. Alright, let's have a trial or let's have a short of a quiz. No, not the quiz, but an exercise. So, in classical conditioning, what is the unconditioned stimulus? So, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this. A, newly conditioned event. B, learned response. C, natural stimulus. D, response from the conditioned stimulus. Alright, so let's see the answer. The correct answer is letter C. The unconditioned stimulus is a natural stimulus that elicits an unlearned response. So, unconditioned response, ito yung bell lang. The dog food lang. So, in my example a while ago, yung dog food, nagre-response ng salivation ng dog. So, hindi siya natutunan, automatic siya nangyayari. So, that's the unconditioned response. Or rather, the unconditioned stimulus, also known as which is the definition of a natural stimulus. Alright, so let's continue. We have the genes, okay? This is also part of the biological, pero this is basically the last part of our lessons. So we have the genes. Genes is composed of DNA. Okay, and it has various locations on chromosomes. So, nasa chromosomes, yung DNA, which is nasa loob ng cell nucleus. Our cell, nandun yung parts ng cell, part nun is chromosomes, at nasa loob ng chromosomes is DNA. Now, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 from our parents, 23 from our father, 23 from our mother. On the first 22 pairs, okay, from the first 22 pairs, these are called autosomes. The last pairs, which is the 23rd pair, or one pair is the sex chromosomes. Dito natin malalaman kung babae or lalaki, si baby. Again, we have 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent, 22 pairs from 1 to 22 are called autosomes, and then the 23rd pair, or that one pair is what we call the sex chromosomes. Now, on the sex chromosomes, it can either be XX or XY. Pag XX, that's female, and XY, that's male. This is also a review. We've already discussed this in Introduction to Psychology. We also have dominant and recessive genes. Okay, so dominant genes, dito yung does not require a pair of allele. Ang recessive gene kasi, they require at least 2 pairs of recessive genes para mag-appear. Okay? Unlike dominant, parang siya, okay lang kahit mag-isa, nandyan siya, it is okay. So, like for example, sa family of puro curly hairs, so if dominant gene nila ay curly hair, that's because, yun yung dominant gene nila. Okay? May curly hair. Recessive, for example, sa family, lahat ay right-handed, tapos biglang naging left-handed yung last na, yung bunso. So, it means to say, recessive gene yun. Merong recessive gene na left-handed. Alright. So, that's my just classical na example. So, this is just a simple example. Pero, there's a lot more example for that. So, yun yung pinaka least or pinaka simpler explanation for that. But, again, this has been already discussed to you in our previous classes, especially in Introduction to Psychology. Now we have the adverse life events. So when we say ALE, adverse life events, this can actually influence our genes. Okay? This influence our genes. So for example, na-trauma ka, mayroon kang na-abuse na naranasan, or many more, that can actually influence our genes. Okay? So why am I saying this? Alright. Okay, so according to Eric Kandel, so, let me just read this. Speculated that the process of learning affects more than the behavior. So, hold on. Bago tayo pumunta dun sa adverse life events, okay, I'm going back to that. Punta muna tayo kay Eric Kandel. So, kay Eric Kandel in here, sabi daw niya, kapag mas natututo ka, mas may apekto yun sa behavior mo. So, also, that's why our environment may occasionally turn on certain genes. So in certain scenarios, like what I've said a while ago in adverse life events, okay? So kapag meron kang natutunan or meron nangyari sa'yo in your environment na very traumatizing, it can turn on certain genes. Okay? Dominant yan o recessive yan. So for example, family of, kunyari, merong may bipolar. So, sa family, and then wala nang sumunod, pero nagkaroon ng aksidente yung isang bata, and then, or abuse, na-turn on, bigla yung bipolar genes nga. So, yun ang sinasabi ni Eric Kandel. No, our environment can trigger certain genes. So, para maalala nyo, candle, parang kandila. So, yung environment, tina-turn on nga yung certain genes. So, parang nagliliwanag yung certain genes. Okay. Alright. So, we also have the diathesis stress model. So, when we say diathesis stress model, in here, yung certain individuals daw, meron tayong inherited tendencies to express mga ilang behaviors na kung saan it can be activated under stress. Under stress. So, in simple terms, kaya siya sinabing diathesis stress model. Yung diathesis kasi, ibig sabihin niyan, is making someone vulnerable sa isang bagay. For example, depression. For example, si patient A ay meron siya, sa family nila is may depression. Pero tanging siya lang is yung walang depression. Pero due to stress, maaaring magkaroon siya ng depression. For example, na-stress nga siya, kunyari, at school. So, nagkaroon siya ng depression. So, ang tawag natin doon is diathesis stress model. Due to stress, maaaring ang tao maging vulnerable to any mental disorder. I hope I'm making myself clear. Diathesis is a condition that makes someone susceptible to developing disorder. So, meaning to say, si diathesis, ang person ay maaaring magkaroon ng disorder because of stress. That's actually diathesis stress model. It states here na mas mataas ang vulnerability ng tao, mas konting stress ang kailangan niya para ma-trigger or magkaroon ng mental disorder. So for example, in simple terms, kung may tendency, for example, 5 sila sa family, lahat sila may depression, 5 sila sa family, isa lang yung walang depression, pero 4 ang may depression. So ngayon, kung vulnerable yung isang tao na yun sa depression, maaaring makadevelop siya ng depression kahit super konti lang ng stress. That's what diathesis stress model is. So, basta mas vulnerable ka, kahit konting stress lang, madidevelop mo ang any mental disorder. So, we also have gene-environment correlation model. So, in here, people might have genetically determined tendency to create the environment risk factors that trigger a genetic vulnerability. So, in simple terms, may ibang tao na mayroon silang genetics, tendency, na sila yung gagawa ng risk factors sa environment na maaaring mag-trigger din in return yung kanilang vulnerability na magkaroon ng mental disorder. Okay? So, in simple terms, so tayo, kunyari, ako ay may genetic tendency na magkaroon ng mental disorder. So, ang pangat naman ako talaga example. Anyway, so si patient A is may tendency siya maging anxious, or in simple terms, may tendency siya magkaroon ng anxiety. Dahil siya ay may tendency magkaroon ng anxiety, gumagawa siya ng somewhere at the environment na maaaring magkaroon ng trigger or maaaring ma-trigger yung pagkakaroon niya ng anxiety. So, in simple terms, yung gene mo ay correlated sa kung paano ka gumagalaw sa labas, at yung ginagawa mo sa labas ay maaaring makakapag-trigger ng mental disorder mo. That's gene-environment correlation model. And then lastly, we have epigenetics, which is the study how your behavior and environment can cause changes that affect your genes work. So yung behavior mo ngayon at yung environment mo ay maaaring magkaroon ng change sa iyong behavior through your genes. Dahil yung genes mo. Actually, that's the study. This is the study of epigenetics. The theory is gene-environment correlation model. So again, epigenetics is just a study, pero ang model or theory ay maaari natin magamit na gene-environment correlation model. So let's have an exercise. How can adverse life events, or ALE, influence genetic tendencies? A, they have no impact on genes. B, they can overwhelm the influence of genes. C, they can change the DNA sequence. And D, they always results in positive traits. I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this. Alright. So if your answer is letter B, you are correct. They can overwhelm the influence of genes. Adverse life events can be powerful enough to override genetic predispositions, leading to different outcomes than those predicted by genetics alone. So in simple terms, any event sa buhay mo, basta traumatizing, maaari maging dahilan ng iyong mental disorder. Alright, next question. What did Edward Titchener contribute to psychology? A, founder of behaviorism. B, developed systematic desensitization. C, introduced introspection. And D, created the law of effect. The best answer is letter C, introduced introspection. So Edward Titchener is known for his method of introspection, where subjects report their inner experiences and after encountering stimuli. So, sa Edward Titchener, mas kilala siya sa introspection kaysa sa law of effect. Okay, so law of effect, part yon, pero mas kilala siya sa introspection. Alright, so I hope you understand my my topic. Actually, it's early morning here in Trinity. I recorded this one because I have a training, and you know that. Anyway, so if you have any questions, please let me know. And yeah, see you on our next meeting. See you then. Bye now. Bye now.